and you're going to court. But in most instances, in most of these instances, that's not the case. And so, well, I think the Master Sergeant has a point that we need to have trust in American citizens to carry lawfully. That's the law, and cops need to understand the law. We're not there yet. We're not to that point where people are comfortable enough with weapons to stand there while one person's holding one. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. So I think maybe if we had more people carrying openly, if we had more people that were willing to display their firearms lawfully, the more people would get comfortable with it, including police officers, and it wouldn't be an issue. That's just what I think. I've got it posted up on the page if you want to give your personal opinion. It's on facebook.com/AmericaOurWay. It's one of the stories in the feed, and you can chime in there. Let me know what you think. Now, I don't know how many of you were paying attention to the news today, but President Obama was handing out the Medal of Freedom. It's the highest honor a president gives to a civilian. And I can't help but feel a little disgusted at that, because it's getting the Medal of Freedom from President Obama is kind of like getting charity from somebody on welfare. Like, it just doesn't quite make sense. It's not quite right, because it's somebody else's money in that situation, but President Obama has done so many things that are anti-freedom, like expanding NSA spying, overseeing the construction of this new NSA facility. You've got him droning, hundreds, if not thousands of people. You've got, the raid on Osama bin Laden that he took credit for, and then our soldiers died. You've got all these instances of President Obama wrecking freedom. The Tea Party groups being targeted by the IRS, and yet he's handing out the Medal of Freedom. I would be ashamed of myself if this is the president that I had gotten it from. So just on the premise, I think it's massively hypocritical that this man is handing out a medal for freedom. He's given it out to something like 50 people. I would be very upset if I was to ever receive it and it was this president that gave it to me. Then again, who knows when we'll ever have a president worthy of a Medal of Freedom again. Who knows? But there were some interesting people on the docket today that received this medal, namely Oprah Winfrey and Bill Clinton. Now, I know what many of you are cringing hearing that because of Oprah's recent comments about how people are racist when they criticize Obama, and that they disrespect the office of the President of the United States because they are racist bigots. A little bit redundant, but I think you get the point. Now, I know how you feel about Oprah being ridiculous. I know how you feel about Oprah probably not deserving to be in the spotlight anymore, and thankfully her new network is in the tank. It's not doing too well. And that's her own fault for making these political statements and wrecking the connection she had with Middle America, her base, because obviously Middle America is center-right. Now, all that being said, all these stupid comments that she's made, all of this ridiculousness that's been spewing out of her mouth recently, since Obama kind of came into the spotlight, her doe-eyed political fawning over him, that does not diminish the fact that she deserves this medal. It kind of pains me to say it, but Oprah earned it. I mean, she was one of the first black women in advertising. She refused to change her name to Susie, which people urged her to do. She became, one of the first black women with a talk show. She made billions of dollars, became the first African-American female billionaire, has done countless acts of charity for people all around the world. Now, if anybody deserved the medal, it would be her. simply because of all the things she's done for charity. Getting, people educated with her girls' schools in Africa, that is a big part of what helps freedom, getting people educated. So when you look at all of the stuff that she's done in that aspect, overcoming her abusive childhood and stuff like that, she deserves a Medal of Freedom. And I can say that honestly and without hesitance, because she has. I mean, she's earned it over the years. She did not become this titan of broadcasting for being an awful person. I mean, politically, yeah, pretty awful. But politically, so was Obama. So, I mean, Obama was the one that gave it to her, so that's kind of, like kind of a smirch, a smudge on the receiving of that medal, in my opinion. That's just me. But she deserves it, so let's just be clear on that. She earned it. However, I don't think Bill Clinton should have even been in the same room as this medal, and neither should Hillary. I'm glad she didn't receive it. I thought for a while she was. I heard a report saying she was. Thank goodness that's not true. But Bill Clinton did receive it today, and I don't believe for 1 second that Bill Clinton should have gotten this medal. Sure, he's done a lot for charity and stuff since he was president, but I don't think that makes up for all of the stuff that happened while he was in office, governor and president. And you can't receive a Medal of Freedom and have done all the things he did, especially against the American people. And I am very disgusted by the fact that he was honored today. I mean, I get it, because Obama's trying to cozy up to the Clintons to help a Democrat win in 2016. We all know what's happening here. But I think as Americans, we ought to be upset with this. Like, sure, it's been enough years to where people have forgotten a lot of this nonsense, but I'm going to remind you. I'm going to remind you so that as we see the Hillary-loving crap coming out of the media, as we see people everywhere talking about how great she is, first woman president, yada, 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 I want all of you to defiantly shout about all of the nonsense that these people did, all of the corruption that these people are responsible for. I want you to know it. I want you to know it well, and I want you to shout about it. Anytime somebody talks about Hillary, I want you to say, oh, you mean when she was thrown out of Goldwater, or excuse me, when she was thrown out of Watergate for being corrupt? You mean the part where she stole from the White House, or the part where they hired, et cetera, et cetera. And I've gone over the Hillary stuff before. We'll save that for a later episode. But I'm going to go ahead and go over Billy, because I feel like it's been a while since people have really talked about all of the crap that Clinton did. And I think it's important to remember who these people are. These people that, moderates are coming out and saying, oh, well, he was a good president, and people have a favorable opinion of him. And, that's how they sound. And in reality, it's important to remember that this guy was almost impeached like 5 times. 5 times he had different charges against him that were impeachable offenses. And I think we need to remember that. I think it's very important. So here we go through the list. First off, he fired the White House travel staff. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, he was within his right to do that. Then he hired a whole bunch of his friends to run the White House travel office. And to me, that's very disgusting. And I think we all ought to find a problem with that. Now, I can understand in some situations where, the president does get his own preferences on, staff and stuff like that. But it's not commonplace to fire the White House travel staff. They're there for his leisure. And he hands it over to some friends so he can get them, in the kitty, so to speak. He tried to pass universal health care, single-payer healthcare system in the early 90s. Hillary was the senator spearheading it on one of her task forces, whatever you want to call it, which would have wrecked that balanced budget that everybody talks about that he ignores Newt Gingrich's part in. People seem to forget that the Clinton government shutdown forced the budget cuts that resulted in the balanced budget. That happened. President Clinton raised taxes to help get there, but he refused to cut spending, so it wouldn't have balanced out. You can thank Newt Gingrich for forcing him to cut spending. But nobody ever seems to remember that. But he did. He and Hillary were pushing hard for single-payer health care in the 90s. And as we can see from Obamacare, Obamacare is bad enough, but they were pushing for socialized medicine, actual socialized medicine. And the only reason they didn't get it is because they were disorganized. There was not substantial opposition to the Democrats on this. And it just shows how incredibly important it is that Democrats never control all three branches. Because when they do, they try to shove socialized medicine and other nonsense down your throat. And it's really reprehensible. And more importantly, single payer eliminates choice and freedom in the healthcare marketplace. So that's why it's on my list here of reasons why he shouldn't have got the medal. Now, how about this? The Whitewater land scandal. Clinton provided an illegal $300,000 loan as governor of Arkansas to his partner to help purchase the Whitewater land. He was never charged, but the people who urged him to loan the money were. They were both charged and convicted. But as President of the United States, nobody thought to charge him. They didn't think they could. And I can understand how it would be incredibly daunting a task to take the president to task for something like that. I understand completely why that's not something people would want to do. I mean, to go up against a behemoth like the President of the United States, and a corrupt one at that, yeah, it makes sense. That being said, they still should have done it because people shouldn't be cowards, but this is the situation as it stands. No use crying over spilt milk. He also signed the Bradley bill, which put a 5-day waiting period on handgun purchases. Now, thankfully, that's not in effect anymore, but tell me, does that sound like freedom to you? Anytime these Democrats come in, they always want to socialize your medicine, get government into every industry, and regulate your freedoms. That's a fact. You can see it in every instance, and with firearms, that's obviously one of the biggest ones. They want the right to own them gone. I mean, we know that most Democrats, in drawing rooms everywhere, they sit around talking about how people shouldn't own guns, and it's barbaric, and we're past that, as Jim Carrey likes to say. We're past firearms. But I think it's important to note that, he did contribute to gun control, which obviously is an anti-freedom cause. It's an anti-freedom crusade, and I think it's important to note that. Now, Clinton also signed NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, which eliminated tariffs between U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Now, this is a tricky situation because a lot of people have mixed convictions one way or the other about NAFTA. Now, the North American Free Trade Agreement removed tariffs and basically what amounted to taxes on the consumer. Because anytime the government, anytime you've got businesses paying taxes on, anytime you get businesses paying taxes on a product they're importing or selling, that cost always gets dropped onto the consumers. Because why would businesses pay it when they don't have to? It doesn't make sense. So, the North American Free Trade Agreement was good in that aspect. It was good in that removing those tariffs removed costs to the consumer. That being said, we live in America.